Anna, a 10-year-old girl, faced an inexplicable and terrifying change. Her belly had grown so large she could no longer fit into her biggest pants. Her mother, Christy, was baffled and concerned, but the thought that her young daughter could be pregnant was so absurd it never even entered her mind. Christy tried to soothe both Anna and her own nerves, suggesting it was merely a severe case of indigestion. "Some medicine will sort this out," she said with forced cheerfulness, though a knot of worry tightened in her stomach. That night, however, her fears were magnified when Anna began vomiting in the bathroom with a relentless, gut-wrenching intensity that looked hauntingly similar to morning sickness. Panicked, Christy could only kneel beside her, rubbing small, useless circles on her back. Her father, Kevin, rushed in with a towel, his face pale. Without a word, they understood the severity. They bundled Anna into the car and sped towards the hospital. The journey felt endless, and with each passing mile, Anna's condition visibly deteriorated. Her abdomen seemed to swell further before their eyes, and by the time they reached the emergency room, she had slipped into unconsciousness in the back seat, her small body alarmingly still. At the hospital, the doctors conducted a barrage of tests, poking and scanning the little girl. The results, when they came, were not a relief but a profound shock. Everything was within normal limits. All the scans and blood work showed nothing abnormal. Christy, her voice rising in desperation, confronted the attending physician. "How can this be normal? She's been in constant pain for weeks, vomiting, and now her stomach is horribly distended." The doctor, maintaining a calm, professional demeanor, offered a bland diagnosis. It was likely a severe lactose intolerance causing a dramatic inflammatory response and bloating. That explained the sudden swelling. Christy left the consultation room feeling more confused than ever, yet clinging to this flimsy explanation because it was, at least, an answer. For a brief moment that evening, she and Kevin allowed themselves to exhale, thinking the worst was over. But fate had other plans. In the dead of night, Christy was ripped from sleep by Anna's raw, guttural screams. She flew to her daughter's room to find Anna curled into a fetal position, clutching her stomach as if trying to hold her body together. Sweat plastered her hair to her forehead, and her eyes were wide with a terror that was entirely new. In that moment, Christy and Kevin knew with absolute certainty that they could not rely on another routine appointment or a second opinion tomorrow. They had to act now. They drove straight through the night to the largest, most reputable children's hospital in the city. There, in the stark fluorescent light of the emergency department, a weary young resident examined Anna and delivered a dismissive verdict with a shrug. "It's just acute acid reflux. Kids get it. She's fine. Mom, Dad, you need to relax. You can take her home." He advised increasing her post-meal walks and was already turning to leave when the couple intercepted him in the hallway, their voices trembling with a mixture of pleading and fury. The doctor, his patience exhausted, said coldly, "If you don't trust my assessment, you are free to go to another hospital, but please don't waste our resources here. I have actual patients to attend to." Something in Christy finally shattered. All her fear, her exhaustion, her maternal ferocity coalesced into a single act. She grabbed the doctor's arm, her eyes flooding with tears that were also a challenge. "You look at my daughter again," she demanded, her voice low and shaking like that of a lioness defending her cub. Something in her broken determination finally penetrated his professional detachment. Reluctantly, he agreed to admit Anna for further observation. The night that followed was an eternity of anxious waiting on hard plastic chairs. Finally, as a gray dawn broke, Dr. Borg, the stern and experienced head of pediatrics, entered the room. His expression was grave. "The scans revealed an abdominal obstruction," he stated without preamble. "A section of her intestine is twisted, creating a complete blockage. If we don't operate immediately, the tissue will necrotize and she will die." His words hung in the air, leaving no room for questions. Before Christy or Kevin could fully comprehend the sentence, nurses swept into the room to prep Anna for surgery. One nurse held up a clear plastic nasogastric tube. "Sir, we need to pass this through her nose to decompress the bowel. I need you to help hold her still." What followed was a scene of heartbreaking violence, a necessary brutality that left both parents feeling like accomplices in their child's torture. They watched, helpless, as Anna was finally wheeled away on a gurney, her small form swallowed by the operating room doors. The surgery itself was surprisingly brief, but the news that followed was not of recovery. Dr. Borg's face was even more somber. He had discovered the true, horrifying problem. Anna's intestines were not just blocked. They were fundamentally dysfunctional, completely paralyzed and unable to perform peristalsis, the muscular motion that moves food through the digestive tract. Her body could not process any nutrition. And the most devastating part, there was no surgical fix, no known cure for this rare motility disorder. Anna's only chance at survival was to receive all her sustenance through the nasogastric tube, indefinitely. As the doctor explained this lifelong sentence, Christy closed her eyes, a wave of nausea hitting her as she envisioned the future. A future of tubes, pumps, and a child who would never taste a birthday cake. She couldn't bear to hear more. She stood up, walked out of the room in a daze, and let the sterile hospital wall hold her up as she wept. Life, in its relentless way, forced them to adapt. Anna came home tethered to a feeding pump. Her world became a schedule of liquid formula drips and a handful of vitamin pills. She could eat nothing by mouth. Christy wore a mask of optimism, but every time she saw the hollow look in Anna's eyes or the way she flinched at the smell of family dinners, it felt like a shard of glass twisting in her heart. Despite Dr. Borg's definitive prognosis, Christy and Kevin refused to surrender. Christy became a woman possessed, spending hours on the phone calling every specialist and research hospital in the country. Kevin, a man of quiet action, mortgaged their beloved family farm to its limit and sold anything of value to create a war chest for an experimental treatment. But hope is a fragile currency, and theirs was rapidly depleting. Months passed without a single promising callback. The silence was deafening. One evening, after yet another futile call, Christy's resolve finally crumbled. She slid down the wall by the front door, whispering into the empty hallway, "This is it. This is her life. We can't change it." She was ready to accept the unthinkable. It was then she looked up and caught the gaze of her younger daughter, Abby. In Abby's eyes, she didn't see pity or fear. She saw a profound disappointment, as if her mother, her anchor, was giving up. That look was a galvanizing shock. If I break, Christy thought, what will they learn about perseverance? The next morning, with a renewed, desperate energy, she bypassed the endless phone trees. She bought 2 plane tickets to Boston. There was a world-renowned pediatric gastroenterologist there, a Dr. Nurko, whose waiting list was years long. Christy decided they would no longer wait for permission. At the prestigious Boston hospital, they were met with polite but firm bureaucracy. The receptionist, though her eyes softened at the sight of the frail girl with the tube, explained the rules were immutable. The earliest consultation was in 6 months. Christy, expecting this, simply nodded, took Anna's hand, and turned to leave, her heart a stone in her chest. Yet, as they stood on the busy sidewalk outside, her phone rang. It was the hospital. There had been a cancellation. Could they come back at 7 a.m. tomorrow? Christy never knew if it was divine intervention or the quiet advocacy of that compassionate receptionist, but she wept with a sudden, staggering relief. Dr. Nurko was a sharp, focused man whose confidence was immediately palpable. He reviewed Anna's charts and offered not a cure, but a lifeline. He proposed a powerful, experimental prokinetic drug, a medication that might wake up her dormant intestines enough to allow for partial oral feeding. She could potentially live without the tube. For the first time in a year, Christy felt the oxygen return to her lungs. But then came the caveat. The treatment was unproven, its long-term side effects unknown. It would require Anna to return to Boston for intense monitoring 2 days out of every week. Boston was 2,000 miles from their home. The logistics were a nightmare, the cost of weekly flights astronomical. Christy didn't even glance at Kevin. "We'll do it," she said, her voice iron. The treatment began. The change was miraculous at first. Anna's NG tube was removed. Her smile, genuine and unburdened, returned as she tentatively sipped a milkshake. But the reprieve was short-lived. The drug's side effects were a different kind of torment. Every night, Anna was seized by crippling, vice-like abdominal pain that no position, heating pad, or painkiller could touch. It was a pain that stole her sleep, her joy, and slowly, her will. The light in her eyes dimmed again, replaced by a resigned agony. Finally, broken by the relentless cycle of hope and suffering, Anna gave up. She refused to eat, to bathe, to take the medication. One night, watching her daughter shudder through another wave of pain, Christy's own strength finally evaporated. The financial ruin, the emotional whiplash, the sheer exhaustion of the weekly cross-country odyssey. It all came crashing down. She called Kevin, her voice a hollow monotone. "It's over. We're bringing her home. Let her be at peace." On the day of their discharge, Dr. Nurko walked them to the hospital entrance. The confident specialist was gone, replaced by a man burdened by defeat. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly, the words heavy with a sorrow he couldn't disguise. He watched them go, a still figure in the bustling doorway, and released a long, weary sigh. Back home, Anna retreated into a deep depression. She would sit for hours by the front door, a silent, wraith-like figure simply waiting for her life to end. To break the terrible spell, her sister Abby, with intuitive wisdom, led her into the backyard. "Remember our tree?" she asked softly, pointing to the massive old oak they had climbed countless times in childhood. Anna initially shook her head, but Abby persisted, taking her hand. Slowly, mechanically, Anna began to climb. High up in the sturdy branches, surrounded by rustling leaves and dappled sunlight, the sisters talked of silly childhood memories. And there, for a fleeting moment, Anna's face relaxed into a true, unguarded smile. It was then they heard it, a deep, sickening crack. The thick branch supporting them groaned and splintered. "Anna, move! To the trunk!" Abby yelled, but the world gave way. Kevin, hearing the scream and the thunderous crash, sprinted outside with a ladder. Peering into the gaping, dark hollow of the shattered tree, he saw nothing but an abyss. His voice broke as he called 911. The rescue operation that unfolded was tense and complex. The ancient tree was unstable. Cutting it could collapse the hollow cavity onto Anna. Firefighters decided on a delicate, high-angle rescue using an aerial ladder to extract her from the top. A crowd gathered, and with them local news crews. A reporter, speaking in a hushed tone to his cameraman, voiced what everyone feared. A 30-foot fall headfirst into a tree cavity. The chances are virtually zero. Overhearing this, Christy felt her knees buckle. The air left her lungs. The strong, defiant woman was utterly gone, replaced by a raw nerve of pure terror. She stumbled to the massive trunk, fell to her knees, and pressed her forehead against the rough bark as if she could transmit her own life force through it. "Please," she sobbed, a primal, wordless prayer. One by one, neighbors and strangers, moved by her raw anguish, formed a silent circle around the tree, their heads bowed. After 3 excruciating hours, a firefighter's voice crackled over the radio. "We have her." Anna emerged, cradled in a rescue harness, her body limp and still as a discarded doll. As she was lowered to the grass, Christy and Kevin braced for the worst, their hearts frozen. Then, a paramedic nodded. "She's breathing. Pulse is weak, but she's alive." Christy collapsed, saved only by Kevin's arms. At the local hospital, doctors prepared for traumatic injuries. But the scans revealed the impossible. Anna had no skull fracture, no spinal damage, not even a significant bruise. She was severely dehydrated and in shock, but after some intravenous fluids, she was alert. "Medically, it's inexplicable," the attending physician admitted, shaking his head. The next morning at home, another impossible change occurred. Christy, bringing Anna water, stopped short. The grotesque, hard distension of Anna's belly was gone. It was flat, soft. "Mom," Anna whispered, her voice clearer than it had been in years. "I'm really hungry. Can we have burgers?" This time, Christy didn't hesitate. They flew back to Boston. Dr. Nurko, reviewing the new battery of tests, the clear MRIs, the normal motility studies, was left speechless. The paralysis was gone. The obstruction was gone. Every metric of her digestive system was functioning normally. "I have no scientific explanation for this," he finally said, a baffled smile touching his lips. "Her body, it just healed itself." News of the miracle spread like wildfire. Anna's story was featured in papers and on local news, framed as a divine marvel. Soon, the family was invited to share their testimony at their community church. Standing at the pulpit, looking out at a sea of uplifted, hopeful faces, Christy felt a sudden clarity. She understood what she needed to say. "You've all heard about the miracle," she began, her voice steady. "And yes, my daughter is healthy against all odds. But if I'm being honest, I'm not sure I believe the miracle was just a hand reaching down from the sky." She paused, collecting herself. "I believe the miracle was in the details. It was in Anna's friend who still invited her for sleepovers, even though she had to bring her feeding pump. It was the waitress at the diner who saw us counting change and, accidentally, added a discount to our bill. It was the airline agent who clicked his keyboard for 20 minutes and then miraculously found a way to honor our expired frequent flyer miles so we could get to Boston. It was the hospital receptionist who broke protocol to get Anna's file seen. It was our neighbor who saw the ambulance and later told me she kept her own baby in the car for an hour so her crying wouldn't disturb Anna's rest." Christy's eyes shone with tears, but she didn't wipe them away. "I don't know if God exists in the way we talk about, but I know this for certain: kindness exists, courage exists, the fierce, stubborn love of a family exists, and the strength of a little girl who never stopped fighting, even when she thought she had, that exists. Maybe those things are the miracle. Maybe they're the most real magic we ever get to see." The church was utterly silent. And then, slowly, a wave of understanding applause began, not for a distant deity, but for the profound human truth she had just spoken into the quiet space.